Audio.
Hey, everybody, I have audio now, so you can hear me. I am Alina Pete,
Yay!
and I do comics that you can read at alinapete.com or at weargeek.com. Happy New Year, Kel.
Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year.
Um,
It's been a few weeks. Feeling good about things.
yeah. How was your New Year's
It
things?
was lovely and freezing cold. I went back to Saskatchewan, and it was minus 50 most of the time I was there, minus 40, which is the same
That's
in
too
Celsius and
cold.
Fahrenheit. It is exceedingly cold. I brought my birds with me. They didn't like it.
Okay. Poor birds.
Yep, they were very happy to be indoors. Meg would occasionally go to a window and like glare out at the snow and be like, "Oh hell no!" And I was like,
No.
"I agree. It's too
Uh,
cold. I don't like it."
yeah. It's too much. Too cold. Too much. Um, question.
Yeah,
Have you seen Glass Onion?
I have not, and I desperately want to.
You
It
need
is
to see Glass
on.
Onion.
I've seen Knives Out, loved it. It was on my to watch list, except that we watched Pinocchio this weekend instead of Knives Out, and I'm glad I've seen it,
I
but I don't know that I can
um
recommend it, even though I love Del Toro's movies.
I'm gonna watch Pinocchio sometime this month because I just canceled my Netflix subscription, so
Yeah,
I have to
good.
watch it before like the
Yeah,
time runs
that's
out.
why we watched
Um,
it.
yeah.
Same, hard same.
I canceled my Netflix subscription because they canceled Inside Job,
Mm-hmm.
which is a cartoon I really like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just sick of Netflix canceling the good shit.
Just everything.
Um, yeah. Um, but so Glass Onion versus Knives Out, without spoiling anything. Um, I think
I've
Knives Out is a better mystery.
mm,
But Glass Onion is more fun to watch.
I've heard that both of them are about rich people being horrible, but in very different
Yes.
ways. Because like the
Yes.
Knives Out is about old money, and Glass Onion is like about influencers and Hollywood and celebrity.
It's more about tech billionaires are idiots.
Oh, good. I mean, yes, correct.
Um, and both Knives Out and Glass Onion have um, money and power. Their only allegiance is keeping themselves in money and power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'll stop talking about it or else I'll spoil shit.
I can't wait to see it. I
Um,
cannot wait to see it. I've heard Janelle
it
Monáe is the best, and I
she's
knew that already,
wonderful.
but like,
Yeah, she's wonderful. I love her. Um,
you are doing a
yeah.
very unenthusiastic woo in this Happy New Year picture I'm drawing.
Uh, but yeah, I've watched Glass Onion 3 times.
Oh, good. I watched Knives Out when I was like sick and feverish, uh, and I was like, man, that movie was amazing. And then I was like, was it that good, or was I just very, very sick? And then
Oh,
I rewatched it. I was
but
like, oh no, hell, it was that good. It was real good.
also, I watched a YouTube that explains the symbolism in the Go game in Knives
Mm.
Out.
Mm-hmm.
It lasts 30 seconds, but it's thematically relevant to the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so it was a guy who analyzes games for a living. Like that's what his YouTube channel is.
Oh, cool.
And then he talked to like championship Go players um about like the strategy each of the characters are using.
Cool.
Um so yeah, it's good stuff.
Cool, 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 cool. I forgot to fire up my PNG tuber, and now I can't remember what the program is called because it's been too long. Huh.
Um
What is my
I
software,
also
y'all?
I also recently watched Woke on
Hmm.
Hulu.
Hmm.
I don't know how you as a Canadian would watch it, but it's on Hulu here. Um, but Woke is about you ever read any stuff by the cartoonist Keith Knight?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it's very loosely based off his comics.
Gotcha.
It is about a cartoonist named Keith who spells his name differently than Keith Knight. Um,
Hmm.
and he is torn on should his cartooning talk about black issues or sh- should he just because he resents that people assume that he should
Right.
um
Right.
but also doesn't he have a responsibility as a black cartoonist like sort of
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. I
um
know these struggles well.
yeah, so
Not
it's
not from
basically
from the indigenous viewpoint, not from a black
yeah.
viewpoint, obviously.
Yeah, but so it's basically that's the like internal conflict for the lead.
Neat.
Um and it's funny. Um so it's a good
That sounds very
time.
good.
Yeah. And what's fun is
Sounds like
all the
it's a good
like
cartoonist.
captions. Yeah, all the captions are Keith Knight's hand lettering.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like when someone gets a text message, a little thing pops
Ding.
up from their phone that is like Keith Knight's lettering.
Fascinating.
Um
Did they consult with him?
I mean, they're based off his comics, so like
Yeah.
his art's all over it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, so clearly he's involved. The main character's him but not him. Like
I stayed at a hostel with that dude in San Francisco years and years and years ago.
he's a cool dude.
He's a very cool dude.
Yeah.
I think it was
But
for
yeah,
apes. I think that was like one of the early
I
apes I went to.
yeah, I remember talking to Spike about watching it and I was like, "Hey, even if it's bad, then at least I'm supporting Keith's stuff
Yeah,
and
right?
he's a cool dude."
He's a
So,
very cool dude.
um and then it turns out it's good.
Good.
So,
Excellent. Is it
also
called
there was a
Woke?
new yeah,
Nice. I gotta watch that.
yeah, I just don't know how you as a Canadian will watch it since it's on
Yeah,
Hulu.
I mean, I will put on my pirate patch and get Meg to sit on my shoulder, and that is how I will watch it.
Um,
Meg, of course, being my
I
cat, for
also,
those who are new to the story.
uh, I also, just today, read the new Wayward Children book by Sean McGuire.
Oh yeah, how is that one? I saw that it had come out.
Uh, it is good.
I'm very excited for it.
Um, the start's a bit brutal. I appreciate that
Shannon
I
doesn't pull
appreciate that
punches.
I appreciate she started the book with a content warning
Yep.
because if I had jumped in without a content warning,
Be like, whoa.
I was like, I don't think I'm prepared for this. But
Whoa.
because the like in all the Wayward Children books, the kids have to have a reason to want to run away from their previous life.
Yup.
Um, and this main character's stepdad is a grooming pedophile.
Oh boy. Oh
Um,
boy.
so nothing happens in the book. Like
Yeah.
she runs away before something happens.
Yeah.
But still, like
It's the content is there, and you're like, ah,
yeah.
yeah. Yep.
So
I
just
quite
be prepared for that.
I don't remember which title it was, but I quite like the one where it's like set in a Hammer horror fairy
That's my
world.
favorite
I
one.
love
That's
that
my
one
favorite
so
one.
much.
Well, the reason why I like that one in particular, because she's actually gone back to the Hammer horror world a couple of times.
Because those characters are great and the setting is neat.
Because there's the one where they first go,
Yeah.
and then there's the one where they have to go back because the twins switch bodies.
Right.
And but the first one in the Hammer horror world, I really like, not because the Hammer horror world, but because of the opening, the problem with other people's children
Oh, yes.
opening.
Yes.
I love that.
It's very good.
That lives in my brain rent free.
Good. Good. Y'all, if you haven't read the Children series, they are very good. Worth a read. Do it.
But yeah. Um,
I read my first book of the year.
mhm.
Was Snake Falls to Earth by Darcy Little Badger, which I have been meaning to read for ages, and it is well worth the wait. So I'd been meaning to read it from the library, and it's been like booked solidly since it came out. So I knew it was going to be good, but it
Mhm.
was very, very, very good. I like the reflecting world. I like the idea that like all of the animal people and the stuff from stories have gone to their own world to live, and it's something I played around with before in writing the TTRPG Ohunkakan. I had the idea of like the story world is where those people live, and in Darcy's books, it's called the reflecting world, and I was like, great, same idea, love it. We had the same
Cool,
idea.
cool,
It's
cool.
very
Good.
good.
Um, I read more Chainsaw Man. I
Nice.
remember I DM'd you those
Yep.
pages.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, I'm the best at giving fish facts.
Good.
Um,
Which I love.
uh, so
Here
you
for
should
it.
read Chainsaw Man. I sat down and I read it all in one go. That's how good it is.
Nice.
Then I'm gonna try to like take notes on the shit that I watch and read.
Mm-hmm.
Because that way I can then talk about them in my newsletter some more. Um, and because my newsletter definitely has like recency bias, so like I'm
Yeah.
talking about whatever I watched in the week before it went out
Yeah.
rather than the whole month.
Uh,
And yeah,
I have also started doing a newsletter on your advice, and people are really loving it, and I'm enjoying writing
good.
it. Uh, and I
Um,
will especially
I'm
enjoy it at the beginning of next year, where I will be, because I hit this moment at the end of the year where I'm like, fuck, I didn't accomplish anything this year. Ugh, everything sucks. And then I'm like, no, wait, you did a shit ton. What are you talking about?
yeah.
Whereas this way, I can just look back at the newsletters and be like, oh yeah, here's all the things I did this year. That's a lot of them.
I reorganized slash restylized mine because um I'm in a Discord that Jam is actually in,
Oh,
and
cool.
I didn't realize that they were until they started to give me like advice, and they showed me their newsletter.
Their newsletter is so good. That's a lot of what I was
Yeah,
basing mine off of too.
yeah. So I like kind of like put it more into categories so people can like jump ahead
Nice.
um
Yeah.
to like what's coming up in the month first, what I did this month,
Mm-hmm.
media shit that I consumed,
Mm-hmm.
um, then end it with what you might have missed last month.
Yeah. I end mine now with a like the highlights of what art I've done that month. So it's like, here's some of my favorite pieces from this
Yeah,
month, just in
I
case they
think
missed
I'm
them.
actually gonna put the pages of my webcomic at the end of the newsletter,
Mm-hmm.
at least whatever went up for free,
Yeah.
so that way, um, people who aren't necessarily checking my website or like
Yeah. Because not all the patrons
rightfully
go
think
look at the
that
patron posts immediately. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'll look at that
yeah,
later. And then you forget about it.
uh yeah, and also though like Patreon's garbage for reading
Oh,
comics in
it's
sequential order.
so bad. For even just reading
Um
older posts, like trying to go back is the
yeah.
worst. So
I
yeah,
had someone cancel their pledge because like this is a pain in the ass to read
fair.
comics on. The thing, like, when people quit my Patreon and on the survey exit survey, they say the one that always gets me is like, "Kel is not as active as I expected," and it's like, "Bitch, I post something every Friday and every Wednesday and then a newsletter,
Mhm.
like, what more than you want from do you want from me?" You
Daily posts. God, that's not my only job. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always understand when they're like, financial situation changed. I'm like, same.
Yeah, no,
I
my
hear that.
financial situation changed or
Yep.
just, some vague reason. It's
Yeah, you're
it's
like, I
always
get
the
it. I
what
don't.
the one that gets under my skin, like I said, is
Yeah.
the doesn't update enough. It's like, "Excuse me?
Yep.
Excuse me, sir?" Flips the table over.
Yep. Yeah. So I started doing that. It's been really good. I've been enjoying writing them
Yeah.
even. Uh, I thought it would be more of a chore, but I'm actually like, no, this is good to have. Like, this is a nice. What have I been up to this month? What do I want to talk about? The first one was really easy because that was when Twitter was
Dying.
first burning down. Like, it's still dying, but when it
I
first was
I don't
fresh.
know, my follower count has gone back up.
Mine too. Some of them are bots, but some of them are
Mhm.
folks just using Twitter. Um, but
I
it's
mean,
glitchy as fuck now. Like it's a real
yeah,
glitchy
no,
site.
it is very glitchy. I got my assistant now for
Oh,
social
good.
media shit.
Yeah, good.
If you've noticed werewolf shit posts increasing on all my social medias, that's why.
Excellent.
That's not actually me. That's my assistant with instructions to make werewolf
Make some
shit
werewolf shit
posts.
posts. Good.
Yeah, basically.
I
Like
have
that
noticed that you've
meme
been
that's
posting more
like
werewolf stuff, and I'm like, good, good.
that meme that's like is a full moon is out, it's a great time for a werewolf to come out, and the
Yes.
werewolf saying I'm gay.
Yep.
I literally told my assistant post this every full moon.
Good. Good. I
Like
saw the one last night that was like something something. No, I don't think I will. It was like, oh, you push your New Year's resolutions, and it was like, nope, no, I don't think
no,
I will. And I was like, mood,
yeah,
I get it. I understand. I hate New Year's resolutions. I hate them.
that's a great reaction thing. I had fun drawing it because it's just Connor going no
No, yep.
like,
It works great as a reaction gif.
um
It's like, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. No, no,
nope,
don't want it.
no,
No thanks.
um
Huh. All of my birds are trying to go to bed in the same cage, which is not a thing I've seen them do before. You can help their creatures. Here you go, Mare. Come on. Sorry. There's some bedtime chaos going on in this room. There you go, Meg. Meg usually sleeps in her own cage because the boys will chase her if she goes into theirs.
oh.
But she's like settling down to sleep in their cage and they don't know what to do about it. They're like, hey, human, come fix this. This isn't right. This is not what happens every night. So I am in the process of fixing it. Hey, Meg, come on out. No, there you go. Yep. I know you're grumpy because it's late and you're sleepy. But work with me here, bird.
Trying to think of I read a really good graphic novel, or at least the start of what I hope will be a cool trilogy.
Great.
It's called The Night Eaters.
Ooh.
And it is about did you ever read Monstrous?
Yes.
So it's the same creative team.
Cool, cool, cool.
And they're making a YA book that's like two Chinese kids. It's kind of the Seeing Red thing where it's the Chinese kid trying to relate to immigrant parent.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep.
Um, and they're like, our mom's a bitch who all she cares about is her garden and smoking all day. Um, and also she refuses to wear a COVID mask and,
Uh-huh.
like,
Uh-huh.
just a bunch of other stuff, like, um and doesn't really have, like, a single kind word for them.
Yeah.
And then, there's a weird house that can't be sold across the street, and then their mom, like, breaks into the house that, won't sell and drags them along, and, like,
That's
then
interesting.
demons pop out of the house. Like, the house is
Whoa.
haunted, and so that's why it hasn't been able to be sold. So, like, then
Right.
demons show up, and then mom eats the demons.
Oh.
And so apparently
Well,
mom
that's
is a
not what you
supernatural
expect.
creature.
Who
Yeah,
eats
apparently
demons.
mom is a supernatural creature who eats demons.
Cool. That's
And
very
that's why
cool.
she doesn't. Yeah, and so that means that they're half whatever their mom is. Um and they've been tricked into thinking they're human, and so now they have powers and are like, does this mean we have to start eating demons? Like, cause so
That's
it's
very
like
good.
book one of a trilogy.
Good. Good.
And um
All right. All my birds have been sorted out now.
so yeah, so I would
That's very good.
yeah. I'm interested in where it's gonna go. Like, it's one of those things where I wouldn't call it like an amazing book, because it is very much like setting the table for where the
For
rest of
another
the
book.
trilogy is gonna go.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the world setup is good.
It's got some interesting bits in there.
Good.
Um,
I got for Christmas, although I haven't started reading it yet, Blues book, Into the Field of Starlight. Very excited to tear into that. And what other book did I get? I got 2 books. I don't remember. But I was very excited to read both of them.
Hi, Warp Vector. How are you? I'm drawing some pages of my fantasy comic. You Are the Chosen One.
Good. Do you know how many pages that one's going to be overall?
Like 1,000.
Yeah, I knew that one was going to be like pretty long form.
Yeah, and people are like, "Oh, that's really long," and I'm like, "It is shorter than Sorcery 101."
Yep. Yep.
Uh, Warp Vector, yes, that's the one with 23 kids got the same prophecy dream telling them they're the chosen one. Um, I ran into a problem where I was going to name every chapter after a stage of the hero's journey,
Mm.
only to realize there are more chapters than there are steps in a
Stages.
hero's journey.
Yeah. So you can do that
But
for a little while.
Maggie Mayfish, a YouTuber, like recently did a video about how Joseph Campbell is full of shit and the hero's journey is bullshit and a privileged white guy way of looking at stories.
Mm.
Um and uh to the point where he was just flat out like, ladies shouldn't be heroes.
Right.
Um
Right.
and one of his female students told him like, I'm not seeing myself in this journey or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like criticizing it, and he basically told her to get back in the kitchen. Like,
Yeah, nice guy.
he
Good.
did it he did it in a way that I'm sure in his head he thought sounded nice.
Mm-hmm.
Um
But no.
but like yeah,
Yeah.
like um basically he's like, you don't need to be represented in it because you're already fulfilled by being a
By
housewife or
yeah,
whatever.
because your purpose is
Um,
not like a man's purpose; it's a woman's purpose, which is children.
and so then apparently
Mm-hmm.
this student went on to write The Heroine's Journey,
Good.
which Maggie Mayfish then like breaks down the basics of it. And I looked it up to get like the Cliff Notes version. Um, and realized it's basically the plot of Mulan. Like if you broke down like Mulan, the Disney Mulan
Yeah.
from the 90s doesn't follow the hero's journey. It actually follows the steps of
The
the
heroine's
heroine's
journey.
journey,
Good.
which um
Is like you're
is
silenced. No one trusts you. Does
no no it's basically the steps are like tries to conform to femininity, feels unfulfilled by femininity, chases the masculine, succeeds at the masculine, realizes they still feel empty.
yep, 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 yep.
Like, and then like the completion of their arc is combining the masculine and the feminine together. And I'm like, so that's the plot of Mulan.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
um, Warp Vector is in my chat saying, when I was a kid, I thought The Hero with a Thousand Faces was a novel about a shape-shifting superhero.
Nice.
No, it's a book about a white guy pushing the square pegs of non-white mythology through the round mythology white guy hole. Like, so, like, as someone who knows about different mythologies and folklore
You've famously done
from
some books
running
about them.
cautionary fables and fairy tales, like, listening to this, I'm like, that's wrong,
That's
and you're also
incorrect.
completely disregarding this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And you're wrong here, and you're wrong here, and you're wrong here.
yeah, Maggie Mayfish has the point of like he's like, "Oh, all these hero stories like reflect Jesus." Um and
Everything
she's
comes
like,
back to
"Not," and he's like
Jesus.
and it's like and he just says this not realizing that like not acknowledging the history of the church
Mm-hmm.
burning everything that didn't fit with their like
Mm-hmm. Or
it's she's like
transforming
so
it
the church yeah
into
it's
Jesus.
basically so the church burns every book that isn't on some
Compatible.
level like compatible with the Jesus story.
Yep.
They burn all the books and then hundreds of years later Joseph Campbell walks into the library and goes, gee, all these books about Jesus, this must be
Amazing.
something that we fundamentally really like, not realizing that he is only seeing the books that weren't burned.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um
To say nothing of oral
so
histories and all that other stuff, like
yeah.
which
um
it's not real literature, so it doesn't count.
oh no, he doesn't do that. He just tries to force those oral stories into, like I
Yeah.
said, that's why I said it's the square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
um so like so he doesn't call them not literature, he just tries to force them through a hole they don't fit in.
Oh, speaking of
um
great mythologies, I just found out of a story I did not previously know about Canada, and I am delighted, and
yeah,
I need to tell everyone about it as much as I can.
yes,
Uh,
share.
so there is, you're all familiar with Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan chops
Yep.
all them trees. He's a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
Got
You big.
he got a big ox. And they came and they were gonna help with like let's make this country a civilization. Uh, the Ojibwe also have a story about Paul Bunyan, which is great. But he is the bad guy. He comes in, he's chopping up
Mm-hmm.
all of their cool shit. They're like, "Hey, look, we have all these trees and shit that we have planted here and maintained for a lot of time. You're coming around just chopping everything willy nilly. Like, fuck off." And Paul Bunyan's like, "No, I will manifest destiny all over you." Uh, so Nanabojo, who is the greatest Ojibwe and like sort of the trickster
Mm-hmm.
guy, gets into like this huge drop down drag out fight with Paul Bunyan, who won't just fuck off and leave them alone. And it rages for like 3 nights and 3 days because Paul Bunyan's giant. So even though Nanabojo is a really good fighter, like he's hard pressed against this giant guy with an axe. And then finally, when they're both like exhausted and just about ready to keel over, um, Nanabojo leads them to the edge of the lake, grabs down deep into the lake where the big old elder fishes live, and pulls out the
Mm-hmm.
biggest I forget which type of fish, walleye, I think, one of the deep kind of lurking fish. Pulls out the biggest fish in the lake and smacks Paul Bunyan across the face with it, which knocks him on his ass so hard that it left a ass print in the fresh mud that is still there to this day. And I went and I looked it up, and there is at the shores of the Red Lake, which is where this was said to have happened. Uh, there is a lake
There's a
that looks
butt
like an
print
ass
hole.
print. There's an ass print lake.
Nice.
It looks exactly like an ass print. It's so good.
Hi, Onion Knight. Onion Knight is saying hello to both of us.
Oh hey, Onion Knight, you're here just in time for the ass print story.
Good. Onion Knight, I'm so sad that like Inside Job is canceled.
Oh
It's
yeah.
tragic. I know Onion Knight also likes Inside Job. Onion Knight says it hurts me. But yeah, so if you haven't seen Maggie Mayfish's videos about the hero's journey, they're pretty good.
Do need to watch them.
And they're also pretty good in that like they're acknowledging that he was not just a shithead in trying to force other regions like stories into the same shape as Western stories, but also like he got mad at kids for not wanting to fight in Vietnam.
Good.
But he did get mad at teens or young folks for wanting to not to he got mad at them for wanting to fight in World War II.
Right.
So don't fight the Nazis. How dare you not fight the
brown
Vietnamese?
People. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't fight the Aryans, but do fight the brown people.
Cool. Yeah, basically.
Cool guy.
Yeah, Onion Knight. Basically, worst part of all this Campbell stuff is that his teachings are still the basis of like 70% of screenwriting classes. Well, Warp Vector, that's because they are very easy to write something that follows it. Like, because actually that like wheel that everyone sees of the hero's journey, that is someone taking what he said and then simplifying it even more. And it gets so simplified that like it could actually be applied to almost everything. Yeah. Like, so like that circle that people have seen make its rounds and gets used in screenwriting classes is like an even more simplified version. I don't think Campbell is above criticism at all. Far from it, in my opinion, but I do think it's a hair odd that it takes two events nearly 20 years apart. Well, so basically, yes, Onion Knight saying, obviously, like World War II and the Vietnam War, and assuming that Campbell didn't want to change at all in between those two events in his perspectives on war, obviously he was on the wrong side of history twice. It's because he believes in the great man version of history.
Gotta get that myth of meritocracy in
there.
Love that. Eat that shit up with a spoon.
Yeah, I never saw the wheel in film class, but being a Star Wars fan before college made me hyper aware of it, how so much film went back to Campbell. Well, so the wheel is what Star Wars used rather than Campbell himself. because there's a lot of stuff that Campbell talks about that is just like, let's talk about Jesus some more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like,
Loves him some Jesus.
um, yeah, and so the wheel, um, gets talked about a lot, and I feel like even more so though, I feel like I see less people recommend the wheel and they more recommend Save the Cat. Um, which is a book that is basically like, here's how you write a screenplay like it's a math problem.
Yes.
Because it gets down to like such minutia
Yep.
of things that like, um it's very, very specific. It's not even like all stories have to be this or like making some grandiose claim like that. It is literally just saying like, listen, you want to sell a screenplay, do exactly this.
This will move words.
Yeah. This is not about making a good
Art, no.
yeah, this is not about making good art. This is about you getting paid, sir.
Yeah. Studios love this
Yeah.
shit. They love predictable because it's a proven formula.
Yeah.
They are so risk adverse.
Yeah, Onion, I've read Hero with a Thousand Faces. I read it as research before starting You Are the Chosen One. And so yeah, so that's why it kind of like goes off on a bunch of stuff. They are anthropological observations, but they are, like I said earlier, I compared it to trying to fit a square peg through a round hole a lot of the time. Um and uh So I think I'm going to go read the heroine's journey to try to see if I can use some of that to name the chapters of You Are the Chosen One after. Kimmel's biggest problem is how rapidly he hand waves all story structures that don't fit the mold.
Yes.
Yeah, that Onion, that's the big
Yes.
thing, is he either like hand waves them away, but more often or not, he like shaves them off to try to force them to fit into
his
thesis. Yeah. So like earlier I was talking about how when I read it I was like, that is not true. Sir, you got that story wrong because you want to fit it in your mold.
But that was not the point of
And
that story.
yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of times where he brings up indigenous stories, but he gives them the same treatment as like the Indian mythology that you mentioned him completely fucking up.
Yep. Yep. Because he wants to make it fit Jesus.
Yeah, he wants it to fit in his hero's journey.
The thing is, with a lot of oral tradition, they can mean different things depending on not only who's telling them, but who it's being told to. So a lot of thing that elders will do is to tell you a story, and then you need to figure out why they told you that story and what they meant by it. So they're like, here's a thing that happened once, and you're like, have to sit there and think about it and be like, are they telling me this because they think I'm being foolish? Or they're telling me this because they think someone else is being foolish and I'm supposed to forgive them? Or is there some other third message sort of hidden in here? And that's very simplified, but like that's often how it'll go. So like, if you're an outsider looking in on this and going, yes, here is what this story means, like, sort of, but like, no. Not if it's being told in a certain way, and not if it's being told to a certain person at a certain time. It's very contextual. And now that's obviously not the oral tradition where it's like these are sacred stories that are told the same way every time. But that's more like just sort of like informal stories.
Yeah, what I always think is way more interesting than, like, motifs popping up
Mhm.
everywhere is when certain things, uh, pop up, and then there's, like, a scientific reason why they're popping up in every
Oh,
single
yeah.
culture.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Like like, 7 is an important number in a
Mhm.
lot of cultures because as a person without a telescope, you would be aware of 7 celestial bodies,
Mhm.
because it's the sun, the moon, Earth, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter are
Yep.
the ones that you can perceive without a telescope.
Yup.
Um, and so because of that, 7 is important fucking everywhere.
Mhm.
And then what also is interesting is in a lot of cultures, 1, 2, 3 are usually just a mark of some kind.
Mhm.
And then as soon as you hit 4 or bigger numbers, that's when their representation of a number gets more complicated.
Mhm.
Because obviously, like, human brains perceive threes easier, and after you get past 3, it's,
Yeah, because 3
uh
is just 2, 'cause a pair is super easy to visualize. It's just
yeah.
2 and another one is 3. That's real easy
Yeah,
to for our
yeah.
brains to grasp.
So yeah, so I think, like, that's neat.
Yeah.
Um, and, yeah. And, I also think it's neat that they found evidence, um, uh, is, um, what there's evidence that, like, dogs got domesticated around the globe within the same 100-year period.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I also will take any chance to talk about the Russian fox experiments where they found out that like domestication actually has markers, like
Mhm.
physiological
Like
markers.
floppy ears and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and spots and all that kind of stuff. But it also is linked to behavioral modifications, which is fascinating. So if you're
Mhm.
breeding for behavior, you get these physical things. But if you're breeding for the physical signs, just of like this dog looks cool, I want it to look cool, you also get the behaviors along with
Uh,
it.
Onion is in the chat. People of Judeo-Christian cultures perceive in threes, but that other cultures, looking at China especially, that doesn't seem to be hold nearly as universally. Um, I would need to look up what older numbering in China would looked like,
Mm-hmm.
because I was going off even before Christian civilizations. Um, because I know, like,
Base 12.
hieroglyphs in ancient
Yeah.
Egypt, well, like, they still had these 1, 2, 3 are the same mark 3 times.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would have to look into that. But yeah, so, but I think the dog thing is especially neat because a lot of other domesticated animals, they got domesticated in one place and then spread throughout the world,
Mm-hmm.
but dogs getting domesticated
Just all at once.
a lot of places at once, is rad because
Mm-hmm.
dogs are great.
Dogs are super good.
Um,
I love it. I love dogs. If I was not deathly allergic, I would definitely have one. Instead, I have birds. My good weird birds.
Good birds.
I would probably also have birds because I've been obsessed with
Onion Knight
birds since I
says
was born, practically.
Onion Knight says dogs are wonderful. Would pet.
Yes, correct.
Um,
Correct choice. Pet the dog.
yes, good dogs.
I have started playing Fallout 4. Uh,
Uh,
and I had to look up. One of the very first things I did was like, does the dog die? Can the dog die? Because I will be paranoid as shit about
I
it. Because
believe the dog
no,
is
the
immortal.
dog is the only immortal in the entire game.
Um,
All other NPCs
I
can be
yeah,
killed in certain circumstances, but the dog does
I have
not die.
not I have not played Fallout 4, but it does have one of my favorite video game jokes, which is a joke at Henry David Thoreau's expense because
Good,
I hate him.
good.
Um, uh, do you know who Henry David Thoreau is?
No.
Okay, so He is a guy who decided to who in the 1800s decided that like he thinks like modern life has like corrupted what people feel, blah blah
Oh
blah,
yes, yeah,
and
yeah,
he's gonna get back to a simpler time.
yeah.
So he wrote a bunch of essays called Walden about him living in a tiny cabin next to Walden Pond. What he leaves out is that his mom brought him lunch every day and did his
Yes,
laundry every week.
yes. I have heard of this guy.
Um, yes.
It's so quaint. Look at how
Um,
wonderful this lifestyle is. On being on toilet
yes.
vacation. Yes, of course.
So in Fallout 4, you can go to Walden Pond, which has a big sign that's got a quote from him about living simply and in touch with nature is best, and the
Good.
way to actual happiness or whatnot. I'm paraphrasing the quote because I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember off the top of my head, but you can find the remains of that sign since Fallout 4 takes place in Massachusetts.
Yep.
And it's supposed to be like ironic, like, oh, don't you feel better having to scavenge this wasteland? Aren't you like better off without the
Mm-hmm.
modern comforts?
He's like, fuck you,
Uh,
Walden. I'd
yeah,
kill for some
um,
non-irradiated water right now.
yeah.
Literally have
Um,
too. Man, that game gets into the murder real fast. The murder ramps up
uh,
real quick.
other goofy Boston jokes in Fallout 4 is one of the side quests you can do is you have to find green paint to
Yep.
paint the green monster, um,
I have not got there yet.
which the green monster is just a wall in Fenway.
Oh, good.
Um, cause and so it's implied that they've forgotten the actual purpose for the green monster, but they know like it's important and a thing, so
You
they're
got to appease the
trying to
green
keep it
monster,
green. So
right?
they're trying to keep it green and keep it painted. um the green monster is just because Fenway's in the middle of the city and it's also one of the smaller baseball stadiums, so
Mm,
it's really just like a wall that if someone's baseball hits it, that means they got a home run.
gotcha.
um because they can't let it actually go as far as it would be if it was a home run.
Right, right. It just thunks into the wall, and they're like, good enough.
Yeah, that's a home run.
That
Yeah,
counts.
because we don't have space.
I love that.
Um Fenway is so tiny compared to other baseball stadiums that it was cheaper for my dad to fly down to Baltimore
Mm-hmm.
and watch a Red Sox away game than to get Fenway tickets. So like the plane ticket and the hotel,
Still cheaper.
um yeah, still cheaper.
Man. I always hear Fenway talked about, and I'd always gotten the impression that it was like one of the great stadiums. People are like, oh yeah, Fenway Park.
I mean, it's nice. It's just tiny.
Mm,
Like, yeah, like it's just tiny. Like, and because it's tiny, there's higher demand for it.
mm-hmm. One of my favorite bits of media is, well, not favorite, but it's a fun one about Americans in sport. Is there's Stephen Fry, I think it's just called Stephen Fry in America. He's driving across the states, and he goes to each state and sort of visits their biggest attractions. Um, and
Hmm.
the one he most loses his mind over is he's just like, I was not aware that sporting events for like minor league games in the states were so huge and over the top, where they have like there's like jets flying over this like
It
minor league
depends on
baseball
the
game.
state.
Yeah,
Onion Knight, that's
this whole
slander.
thing.
You're banned. You're banned for slandering Fenway. Not really, but how dare you come into my house?
Talk shit about Fenway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All my baseball facts are Red Sox related, so,
Good, good.
uh,
I know precisely zero baseball facts, but I've absorbed hockey
uh,
via osmosis, so
well, that's why I know, Red Sox facts.
good, good. Hashtag Red Sox
Uh,
facts.
yeah, Bill Buckner is a guy who it looked like the Red Sox were gonna win the World Series, and he
Mm.
dropped the ball, like, it
Oh,
rolled
yes.
between his legs. It
Yes.
was an extremely easy catch, like, people for ages thought that he was bribed to throw the game or something.
I think I've heard
Um,
this story because it's like that infamous, and I know like nothing about
yeah.
baseball. And like they thought there
Um
was like a curse or something that went along
No,
with it.
yes, there was a curse. It was basically the Red Sox traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees.
Right.
And that is so they were
They were
cursed to
cursed to
lose the
lose.
World Series for 100 years.
Good.
They won before the 100 years are up.
But
No,
just.
Jimmy Fallon did not break the curse. Daisuke did. Uh the Red Sox were the first U.S. Baseball team to get a pro Japanese baseball player on the team.
Nice.
Uh,
Uh, my biggest sports curse story I know primarily because of the Tragically Hip.
yeah.
So there's a guy called Bill Barilko, who played for the Canadiens, and he died on a fishing trip one summer,
Hmm.
which is the lyrics of the Tragically Hip song. Uh, but they didn't win another uh, uh, Stanley Cup until his remains were found because he plane crashed up in the north somewhere. So they did not win again until he was found, and they called that the
Um,
curse of Bill Barilko.
I feel like a lot of sports teams that lose a lot have a quote unquote curse. Like I
Yes.
know the Chicago Cubs are cursed because they wouldn't let a goat watch the game. Um, it
Excellent.
was basically
Excellent.
it was a guy wanted to bring his goat into the stadium and they were
Good.
like no goats, and he's
He's
like,
like,
well, now I'm
damn you.
cursing the stadium because you would not allow my
I
goat to
mean,
attend.
this man is clearly a
um
wizard, and you have angered him.
yeah.
Of course you're getting cursed. Come on. He's got a goat
I
familiar.
I believe one of the Dresden File short stories is about the goat curse.
Oh God, I need to find that now. Do you know of the
I
Colonel
believe it's
Sanders
in the
curse?
huh? No, I don't
The
know
Curse
this
of Colonel.
one.
This is a Japanese one where I don't
Yeah.
remember which city it was in, but there was a hockey or a hockey team. Come on, a baseball team because they're real big on baseball in Japan. Um, that they won this game and they were so excited that they were having a riot because as you do when you win, no matter what country you're in. And they went to the local KFC, which was like near the stadium. There was a statue of Colonel Sanders outside, as they often have, and they threw Colonel Sanders in the river. And then they were cursed to never win again until they uh, eventually got some Shinto priests together and they like dug this Colonel Sanders out of the river and apologized to the spirit of Colonel Sanders. And then they started winning again.
Okay. I
But
like the goat cursing them better.
yeah, but I mean,
It's funnier
also
that it's a goat.
Colonel Sanders fact. I was chatting with my grandma this Christmas, and she
Yeah.
said she was on a plane with Colonel Sanders in the 60s. My grandma
Um,
was a counselor, and she was going up to Prince Albert to do like a counseling session with some folks. And the plane up there was the gentleman sitting next to her with a very familiar sort of mustache and white suit. And she asked if he was Colonel Sanders, and he admitted that he was. And he was going to open the first KFC in Prince Albert.
huh.
Yeah, they'd invited him out for the opening.
I'm surprised there's a real Colonel Sanders.
Oh God, I need to send you this clip because there was a game show where they'd have people on and they'd try to guess what their job was, or who they were. Because sometimes they would bring on like celebrities and they'd blindfold the audience and they'd have to try and guess who it was. But they did not blindfold the audience for Colonel Sanders because he wasn't known yet. And so like Colonel Sanders walks out and you're just like, yeah, it's the dude from the chicken bucket. Like he's in the white suit, he's got the little bolo tie and everything. And they're all just like, "Oh, who is this nice southern gentleman? I don't know. I've never heard of him before. What is it you do, sir?" It's very weird. It was also the show
Um,
where they had Salvador Dali on, and they had to blindfold the panel for this one because, of course, obviously, it's Salvador Dali's mustache is like unmistakable. But they didn't get his because he does so many different things that they kept answering. Because it's like a 20 questions game. You can only ask yes or no
yeah.
questions. So they kept asking him things, and he would be like, "Yes,
Is
I've done
this the
that."
is this the game show? Have you ever seen Catch Me If You Can?
Yes.
Where it starts with he's on a game show.
Oh, I think it is.
Uh,
I think it is. I forgot that that was on there.
the thing I like about Catch Me If You Can is it's like, okay, it's based off this guy's biography.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a true story, is how they're selling it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, if you think about it for 5 minutes, it's the autobiography of a famous con man and a liar.
Yes. And you're like, can I trust any
So,
of this?
yeah, I can't trust anything in this
No,
autobiography.
obviously not.
Um, the parts I can trust about the autobiography is he was arrested and he committed crimes.
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah, so
That was Leonardo DiCaprio, wasn't it?
yes, I
Yes.
rather like that movie. It's
Yeah.
just I'm skeptical about the factual content in the
Yes.
movie.
No, of course.
Um,
As well you should be. Leo has
uh,
played a lot of skeevy individuals lately, and it's great.
I mean, true to life since
Yep.
he only dates 19-year
Yep.
olds now.
Dump them as soon as they hit 22 or whatever. 25?
And yeah, I think it's 25.
Yeah.
He doesn't want them to be able to rent a car.
They could get away too easily.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Gross.
Disgusting.
Inside Job has an episode about that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
R.I.P. R.I.P.
Leonardo DiCaprio and other celebrities are vampires, and that's why they're only dating young women because they're sucking their blood. They all get mad at Keanu Reeves for dating age-appropriate women.
Yes.
Good night, Onion Night. Have a good one.
Night, Onion.
Yeah, so I believe Side Jobs, the first Dresden Files short story collection, has the Chicago goat curse in it.
Good. Excellent. I will go find that.
Uh
I think I have that one already, actually.
yeah, like
Is that the one where he's got a
they,
vampire LARP story in it as well?
yes.
Because that's why I got that one. A friend was like, "You need to read this. He goes to a vampire LARP, and it's yeah."
Have you read The Utterly Uninteresting Adventures of Fred the Vampire Accountant?
No.
He also goes to a vampire LARP.
Excellent. As you should. I mean,
But
honestly,
so
every
the
vampire LARP turns into What We Do in the Shadows eventually. So like,
So, The Utterly Uninteresting Adventures of Fred the Vampire Accountant is about a nerdy accountant man who becomes a vampire.
good.
And you find out later that he was turned into a vampire because the vampire that made him was trying to build an army of vampires that are pro murder. So he was expecting that if I turn all these nerds, they'll have pent up rage from
Rage.
being bullied as children, and then they will be more likely to go pro murder.
Yeah.
Um, this completely backfired with this guy. He just wants to sit in his apartment and quietly do people's taxes
Good.
and not be bothered.
Ideal, really.
Um,
Good.
yeah.
Fred, sensible fellow.
And so the series is about this guy who doesn't want to lead an exciting life. He just wants to do taxes.
Being forced to be adventurous.
It's a series of like short stories, and the thing I appreciate about them is they are all fairly low stakes.
Good.
Because the first story is he realizes, well, I'm not aging. It's my 10th high school year reunion. Um,
I'm gonna look amazing.
well, no, he's like, I have to go. If I don't go to this one,
They'll all be dead.
then no, the next one, I'll look too young. And
Yeah.
people will figure out I'm a vampire. So he's like,
Right.
so this is the
Really
only
go.
one I can reasonably go to, so I might as well go to it. Like that's his logic.
Fair. That's fair.
And he meets up with the goth girl who used to hang out with him in high school. Vampires attack not vampires, werewolves attack the high school reunion, and it turns out that his high school friend works for like government agency that deals with supernatural stuff. And she only went to the reunion because she knew the werewolves were planning to attack it. But because she works for the government for supernatural shit, she immediately clocks that he's a vampire. And he's like, oh no, am I gonna get hunted now too? And she's like, have you killed anyone? And he's like, no, I get blood from the butcher. She's like, then you're fine. Like,
yeah, I do taxes.
Yeah. And then through her, he learns that the government knows about the supernatural, and actually there's a bunch of special tax laws for the supernatural.
Good. Important to know.
And because he's an accountant and he knows about the supernatural, you imagine those two circles in a Venn diagram. The overlapping bit is very, very tiny.
Yeah.
So he makes a fucking killing by virtue of being like the only one who knows how to do all these taxes for people professionally.
That's very good.
And the second one is because he's hanging out with the goth girl that he used to hang out with in high school. She's like, you work too much. I'm going to take you to hang out and have some fun. They go to a vampire LARP. The kid running the vampire LARP and playing it, well, it's a supernatural LARP in general.
Yeah.
The kid, one of the people who's playing a necromancer in the LARP, it turns out his spell book is real.
Yep.
And since Fred is the only vampire, he is the only one really getting affected by the spells.
Good. That's very good.
So, yeah.
Oh, I need to read this.
Yeah. So yeah, each book is like a collection of short stories. They're very fun.
That sounds very good. I love it already. It reminds me a little of, have you read Life Sucks by First Second Press?
Yes. Where he works at the convenience store. Yeah.
I love a good shitty vampires. Like, not that it's a shitty story, but that the vampires themselves are kind of shitty. Like,
yeah.
There's a kid working at the convenience store who's just like, my problems are really low stakes. And then his progenitor is like, yes, I used to be big in the old country, but now I just sit around and play poker with my friends. I love
and like all the newbie vampires have really menial labor jobs.
Yes. They get embraced to do all of the like shit jobs that their masters don't want to do, and they're just like, ugh, sucks. I hate it.
Yeah. So one of the other stories is so Warp Vector is saying you probably love this vampire comic I'm never gonna make. You gotta get on it.
Give me more terrible vampires. I want
more urban fantasy.
Vampires.
I want more urban fantasy stories that aren't about magic cops. That's what I want. I love Sean and McGuire's Encrypted series where they're just cryptozoologists.
Very good.
Um, I like that Fred the vampire accountant is just an accountant. Warp Vector is saying it's basically as told by Ginger, but everyone is a vampire.
Good.
Um,
Good.
so good, good,
Solid.
good, good, good.
I would read that.
Um, but yeah, good stuff.
I was in a vampire LARP where somebody had the best character because he was a Haven insurance salesman. He was just like, "Hey, we're all dead, so I can't sell you life insurance," which was my thing when I was alive. But you know what we all have is a safe place to hole up from the sun. So I will sell you insurance. And if you should happen to, I don't know, get exposed to the sun while you're asleep, then your offspring will get a whole bunch of your insurance money.
Did you ever read Bloodsucking Fiends by Christopher Moore?
No,
You read any Christopher Moore books?
I don't think so.
Um, he's very funny. He has books that like, but I feel like his books fall into two categories. There are his lazy books where he just needs to get a story out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then there's the
Publisher
books
wants
where he
something.
does, and then he does books where he does research. And so Bloodsucking Fiends is the first in a trilogy about vampires in San Francisco.
Good.
The second of which is half of the chapters are written like a goth girl's live journal. Like he does the status such and such mood listening to blank
Oh, good.
like music
Good.
like
Oh, I miss those days.
And so those were really fun because it's like a kid in who just moved to San Francisco. He wants to be a writer, and he meets vampire girl, and they fall in love, but also the it's kind of like she's eating him, and what's he gonna do about it? And
yes.
So yeah, it's Bloodsucking Fiends, a love story. You Suck, a love story. I forget what the third one's called.
Something sucks.
But there's a lot of the first one, there are parts of it that don't age super great. Because part of how vampires don't get caught is vampires can basically see who has a terminal illness. Which is why it's in San Francisco.
Right.
And it takes place in like the early 90s. So you can guess where this is going. The vampires are in San Francisco because of the AIDS crisis.
Yep.
And then there is but a thing that I liked about it is there's a bit where the main girl, when she's a vampire, her whole story is her realizing, like, the way that it gets put is she didn't realize how afraid she was all the time until she became a vampire and wasn't afraid.
Right.
So it's stuff like walking down the street alone at night.
Yeah, she's like, hey, now I'm the monster. Great.
Perfect.
Yeah. I have nothing to fear.
And
I'll just eat you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, stuff like that. And another neat thing is the vampires turn into mist, and if two vampires turn into mist near each other, they can like share memories.
Oh, cool. That's neat.
Um, yeah, so,
Do they? Is it? Do they have to focus on it? Because I love a accidental memory share with like your enemy. That's
well,
a very good plot.
so like in the third book when they're trying to figure out like how vampire rules work,
Hmm.
in the second book they accidentally turn a cat into a vampire. And because they realize they can turn animals into vampires,
They're like, oops.
they get some lab rats and they start to turn them into vampires to see like what happens.
Little vampire
And
rats.
so but so like a thing is that they have the vampire rats, but then while they're in the cage together, the rats mist together after one has solved the maze, and then they all know how to solve the maze.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so but then as a reason for why vampires haven't taken over the world or why gotten overpopulated is the vampire that made the girl is the first vampire,
Mm.
and apparently every vampire um who wasn't made by him starts to deteriorate, and like so the further away from them that he is, further away from him they are, the quicker they
Faster they
deteriorate.
fall apart. Oh, that's kind of cool.
So they learn this because the lab rat the vampire rats like end up decomposing because
Because
they
it
only
goes
turned
away.
one, and then the rat like made a bunch of other rats, and then
Oh,
they
right.
uh yeah.
Cool.
So like there's some neat stuff in there. Also all the vampires uncontrollably pass out at sunrise.
Good. Excellent. That is my
Like
favorite
they
interpretation of that.
yeah, they cannot wake up.
Yeah, I love that.
Uh but so the book's pretty funny, even though some stuff in it did not age great. I had to explain one of the jokes in it to Joe. They're one of the guys at the convenience store is Hispanic and he goes missing, and this is before they realize vampires are running around.
Mm.
And while looking for him, the one white guy besides the main character um checks the library
Okay.
and is checking all the libraries. And that's one of those jokes that you don't immediately clock it as a joke
Hmm.
unless you know the first thing that you learn in middle school Spanish as a white person is Donde es biblioteca. So
Oh,
this
good.
guy
Yep.
basically went from he learned that, and because that was taught to him, he assumed Mexican people really care about the library.
Right. He's like, okay, that's where he would have gone.
Yeah, basically. So
Good.
that's like the joke. And I had to explain like the joke to Joe. Um
That would be like the equivalent of "Est-ce que tu es frigidaire marche"
uh
in French, which is "Does your fridge
Warp
work?"
Vector just said I'm Hispanic and I didn't get the joke until you just explained it. So um that is something that suburban white people who don't speak Spanish
But they'll
would
all know
understand. That's
how to
the
ask,
joke.
where's the
Yeah,
library?
yeah. um,
Yeah, the French equivalent here in Canada is "Est-ce que tu es frigidaire marche," which just means "Is your refrigerator running?" And it just sounds funny, I guess.
mhm.
So it's just a thing that kids say all the time.
uh,
It sounds like frigger, I guess.
but Christopher Moore's books are usually pretty fun. If they're ones that he did research in. He
Gotcha.
did one recently called Sacre Bleu.
Yeah,
Um, uh, Warp Vector is saying, I know there's a Japanese one about pencils. I
good.
don't know, like,
can't remember what pencils is in
Oh, if you're
Japanese.
learning English in Jap,
Ah,
okay. Um, but yeah, so
I just like the Japanese
Sakura,
pun of kitchen chicken. Like, you can do
uh,
many puns with that.
Sakura Blue is really good, and it's about around the time that Van Gogh was painting is when synthesized paints and dyes started to
Mm,
get made.
mm-hmm.
And before that, there was one blue that is called Sacred Blue, because that
It was a
blue
church
is
one.
the only blue. Well, it's the blue that you're supposed to use for painting the Virgin Mary, because specifically, as other blue dyes got older, they would fade and turn different colors, and so this
Right,
expensive blue was the one that wouldn't fade.
right.
Um,
Therefore, Mary would be
and
kept
so,
looking the best.
and so blue paint has a lot of like important connotations throughout history, like the Picts painted themselves with blue paint,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so it's this thing that is like a succubus slash muse, um, that um, she I guess like sucks the life out of artists and um can turn it into blue paint, but only like if they use the blue paint.
Oh, interesting.
So she is a muse, um,
It's like
who
worship
is
me.
trying, yeah, who's trying to get artists to use the special blue. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, since synthetic blues are getting invented, her and the guy that sucks life force with her, uh they're about to get their food source wiped out,
Yeah.
because artists are switching to
Less toxic
um
the blues.
well, because that blue paint itself is not toxic. It's
Yeah.
just because they have to feed off the blue
Yeah,
paint.
yeah, yeah.
So they're switching to uh um cheaper blues.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to do the thing of like, oh, like you're not a real artist because you're using synthetic paint. Like that's basically what they're trying to pull.
Right.
Um
You gotta
um
use what the masters used. Old school.
yeah. And so she can the creature that like feeds off the artist, she can shapeshift. So she basically turns into whoever the artist's ideal woman was, and
Mm.
like
Becomes their
is their
muse.
muse for a
Yeah.
little while. Yeah. Um and there's bits about like her being with different famous artists. The
Right.
funniest bit is she tried to get her hooks into Michelangelo, but then he just wanted to sculpt. So she got frustrated because he wasn't painting. Like,
Right. Also, not as much into the ladies.
well, she turns into a boy for him.
That makes sense. There's all kinds of speculation, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, she does turn into a boy that looks like Michelangelo's sculpture of David.
Good.
Um and but gets annoyed because he sculpts rather than
Yeah.
paints.
Why are you sculpting all the time, Michelangelo? Paint.
Yeah.
I like it. It's good. I like sculpting. It's relaxing.
Yeah. Um
I gotta find what was hidden within the stone.
yeah, so it kind of like it's kind of like about art history, but also about how frequently famous artists have mental illness. It's implied that it's
Mm.
caused by her. She just finished off Van Gogh at the start of the story. The
Mm-hmm.
prologue is Van Gogh killing himself. Um, uh, but yeah, that one was pretty good.
Cool.
Uh,
Sacre bleu.
and then he has one about whale dicks. called Fluke.
You can use
Um,
whale dicks for all kinds of things. You can make windows out of them.
well, so the thing is, Fluke was the way I found this author is actually Fluke was an assignment at SCAD.
Oh.
Because we had to read it and then we had to try to adapt it to some form of medium while staying true to the source material.
Huh.
And the reason why he picked Fluke is because it is full of dicks,
Mm.
and they are dicks that are slightly important to the plot.
Mhm.
So it's how do you make this book full of dicks into a TV show?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
part of the assignment is like changing the content but still keeping like the basis of like whatever the thesis of the
Mhm. Without changing it too much.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a good exercise.
um I know one of my friends, they made a joke dating game out of it, because you can put all the dick jokes you want in a dating game, and since everyone's only waist up, you can
That's true.
just imply that their dicks are out. And the plot is that like there are basically whale furries have their own civilization at the bottom of the sea, and occasionally humans stumble upon them and they don't let them leave. So
Gotcha.
that's where Amelia Earhart is,
Ah, she's with the
and
whale
what
dicks.
happened to her. Yeah, she's with the whale dicks.
Good, good, good.
And basically, the main character is a marine biologist who finds out about the whale civilization, so they kidnap him.
Good.
Um, and he has to get out. Um, and I think part of the team researching the whales includes the main guy's ex-wife and
Mhm.
her new wife.
Mhm.
Or maybe they're just girlfriends because it was before gay marriage was legal.
Right.
But either way, like his wife's new life partner.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm drawing out of control sled dogs right now, and I'm just making them seem like really excited. They're just running. They're just having a good time.
they're good
They're
boys.
good boys. They're so happy just to be running fast. But they do not, their owner does not want them to run fast.
Uh,
It's the middle of a snowstorm.
Newest Chainsaw Man has the main character being like, I want to touch a penguin.
Aw,
Um, and then the penguin. Well, in the pages I sent you, he keeps asking, "I'm bored. Can we go see the penguins?"
good. Yes, I
Instead
remember
of
that.
her fish
Instead of the
facts.
fish. And she's
Yeah.
like, no, I need to tell you about
So
fish. Important fish facts.
yes. So the newest chapter has the aquarium gets blown up because it was being controlled by a demon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he is all like, I fell into old habits again, mindlessly obeying like what hot girls tell me to do. I need to quit that. And then like mid to him talking to himself, he goes, oh, a penguin, and then picks up a penguin and is playing with it in the background while there's a big fight.
Good.
Um and he's like, I got to hold a penguin,
This
so
is the
good date.
best. Best day ever.
Yeah, good date. You got to hold a penguin.
Good.
I'm gonna send you him holding a penguin right now.
Excellent. I do need to see this boy
He's
holding a
so
penguin.
cute. I want to keep him.
I love penguins. I also love penguins.
He
They're very
he
good.
also loves penguins. Denji is a good boy. He's an idiot, but he's a good boy. He's a good boy that wants to touch a boob.
Yep. You said he got to, and he was like, "Oh, it matters who it is, though. This is not
Yes,
ideal."
he wants to
Better.
touch a boob that he's emotionally attached to.
Yeah.
Good night, Warp Vector. Have a good one.
Night. There. Happy dogs. Happy dogs run fast. Ah, dog's head's too big.
Christopher Moore also has
There.
a book about Coyote.
Oh, good.
It's
It
about a
reminds me of
Native
little
American
tricksters.
guy.
Yep.
It's about a Native American guy who is trying to be as white as possible, and then Coyote is fucking up his shit.
Excellent. Good.
And one of my favorite jokes in it is he is talking to Coyote, and I forget what Coyote has just done that he thinks is stupid, and he goes, "This is a worse thing than when Manhattan got sold for beads or whatever."
Yeah.
Like, and then Coyote says, "Yeah, those dumb white people didn't know you can't own land."
Yes. Correct. Good.
That's really all I remember about that book is that one joke. But yeah, that one's called Coyote Blue.
I read a short story with Coyote in it that I really loved. That was like Coyote falls out of the sky and he's in the middle of Middle America, like in Hollywood, and he's like, "Oh, sweet, Hollywood's great. What can I do?" And then there's like a bunch of studio execs, and it's kind of in like a Roger Rabbit-esque world because Mickey Mouse is like an
Mm-hmm.
actual performer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a rich guy living up in the hills, and it's Coyote and Mickey Mouse hanging out, and Mickey's like, "I can make you into a star. Lots of animal people are stars. It'd be great." And Coyote's like, "Yeah, I want to be a star." And then they're like, "Okay, here's the thing though. You can't show your genitals, because like people are real weird about it. So you got to wear these pants. That's why I'm a mouse that wears pants." And Coyote's like, "Well, I didn't want to say anything because that's real fucking weird, but like, I don't wear pants. I famously got big junk,
Yeah.
love to show it off." And Mickey's like, "That's not gonna fly with the studio execs. You better put on some pants." So like these bodyguards seize Coyote and try to make him wear pants. But because it's Coyote, his genitals will just grow bigger than the pants, and then there's this weird slapstick situation. It's a weird, funny story.
Good.
It's good.
Good.
Yeah. You can't control Coyote's dick, man. You just can't. It's got a mind of its own. They get real mad at him too, and he's like, "I'm not the one doing it. Talk to my dick."
Dick has a mind of its own.
It does.
I saw a
Ended
thing
him burning
going
down Mickey's
around.
house.
Speaking of dicks, I saw a funny thing that someone like screenshotted a Reddit post that was how do you pretend to be punched in the dick?
Ooh.
And it
Ooh.
was, and then and the person posting this was like, the real trans issues here.
Yes.
And what it was a trans guy that's like, "I'm stealth at work, and I work with dogs, and dogs are always punching people in the dick.
Yep.
And how do I convincingly fake being hit in the dick by these dogs? Like, all my coworkers think I have balls of steel."
I mean, you could. Depends on what you're packing that day. But yeah, I don't know. That's a rough one.
Yeah, I just thought that was a fun post. Especially with the caption, "The real trans issues."
Yes, correct. How do you fake being punched in the dick?
Glad I could explain the Dondeus Biblioteca joke to multiple people today.
Good.
That joke, it's because the reason why it got brought up while talking to Joe is Amanda found this thing that like has put together so much dialogue from different animated characters
Hmm.
that you can now type in whatever you want, and it will make it seem like the character is saying it.
Oh, is this Chat GP?
Maybe.
Yeah, Chat GP's been going
Um,
around a lot.
so Amanda took it and had Applejack from My Little Pony say, "Ah, I'm lost. Donde es biblioteca?" um, and while we were all laughing about that, and the
Joe
group
was
called,
like,
Joe
"What?
was like, "What?"
Why? Why?
Um,
Why is this
the
funny?"
thing, the thing that I got it to say that is my pride and joy is Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Good.
I had him say, "You will not have a Dark Lord, but a queen." Like that whole speech.
Good. Excellent.
All shall love me and despair.
Despair. Good.
I also had SpongeBob say some Death Note quotes to
Good.
like continue the meme.
Excellent.
Lindsay Ellis started to make videos again, but they're only on Nebula.
Oh yeah.
Um, and she made one about the Lord of the Rings movies.
Ooh.
Partly because everyone was pestering her for her opinion on the
Rings of
new
Power. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was just like, it's fine, I don't care. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the Lord of the Rings stuff I do care about.
Good.
Um, and talks about like what was changed, what's stayed the same, where is it like weaker, where is it makes sense to change, like all that.
In the Lord of the Rings movies, not Rings of Power.
Yeah. Yeah, Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings movies.
Yeah.
She very quickly goes over, they're fine, I just don't care about them. Anyway, the thing I do care about.
Yeah. Tell you, I've watched. We tried 2 Christmases ago, 2020. Part of our like, well, we're stuck at home because we can't go anywhere because of COVID. Plan was that we're like, let's watch fan edit of the Hobbit movies because the Hobbit movies were
Mhm.
not good.
Mhm.
They were very Pete Jackson, just playing around with some silly, goofy dwarves, and I get that
And let's add a love
yeah,
story.
for no fucking reason. And it was funny because we were watching them, and like the first one, pretty solid movie actually. There was a couple bits that the fans cut out, and then there was a bit from the extended version that they put in, just kind of make things flow better. And we're like, yeah, this is basically the same movie. And then the second movie, like they chopped a lot, but it was still okay. But the third movie was like 40 minutes long, down from like 3 hours, because they're like, there's so much padding in this that like
Yeah.
this is the only part that's important. And also, even then, it still doesn't make sense because like they're running around on this giant ice wall, and there's orcs everywhere for some fucking reason, and it's just a
I
mess. That movie is a mess.
I would love to see have you heard of Topher Grace's edit of Star Wars, the prequels?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I have not.
I'm not, oh, because he hasn't released them anywhere.
No.
So it's
Yeah.
like he just does like private showings.
Yeah.
And I respect his reasoning because he did it as a creative exercise,
Hmm.
and
And
he
doesn't
doesn't
want to.
want to like be shitting on anybody.
Nope.
Which, that's all fair and respectable, good for him. But I
Yeah.
want to see it.
Yeah, same.
Um,
There's a lot wrong about those movies. Is it possible to fix it?
well, that's the thing, and partly why I want to see it is because apparently they are pretty good. Like, because he cut out,
All pod
basically cut out all of
racing.
he condensed the pod racing because pod racing is important plot point of how they get Anakin.
Yeah.
But like most of the Jar Jar Binks stuff,
Yeah, that makes sense.
um,
Which is just pointless and annoying.
and then like when they go through the planet, like that's mostly there so he can sell you some cool monster toys.
Yeah.
Made this guy's head too big. Gotta shrink your head, sir.
Shrink your head.
One more panel, then I'm done.
Nice. I may be done sooner than that. My wrist is definitely out of practice here, and it's getting pretty sore. Mind you, I had a
Poor
pretty
wrist.
considerable drawing day today already, so.
Trying to think. Lindsay Ellis also on Nebula made a video about ET.
Oh yeah.
And how everything from the 80s, like that's super iconic, and gets referenced a lot. ET seems to be the one thing from the 80s that like they're not trying to like reboot or remake.
That may be
And
because of a
she
rights thing, because like that's
no,
Spielberg's baby.
well, so she theorizes that it's because it's so damn sincere that like
You can't
remaking
remake
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like remaking it like causes problems because like
You can't get better than the original.
sincere
Yeah.
sincere isn't in,
No.
and then like the closest you get to something as sincere as ET is Iron Giant, but even Iron Giant is a little bit more meta than
Yeah.
ET because so she compares the way Elliot talks to ET and the way Hogarth talks to the giant. And Elliot talks to the way what Elliot does when he talks to ET is he shows ET his toys.
Yes.
And he talks to ET like ET is a child.
Yeah.
Whereas Hogarth, even though Iron Giant is also a very sincere movie, Hogarth does not show the giant his toys. He shows the giant comic books about guys that came from outer space.
Yes.
So it's at least like meta knowledge of what's going on. And like acknowledging that like this is a thing that happens in comic books. And also it is easier to like suck the meaning out of Iron Giant because he is a big fucking giant gun.
Yes.
Like even though that's the antithesis of the movie is that he is not a gun.
But he's like a big smashy thing that is dangerous, whereas E.T. is like, I am small and wrinkly and I don't move very fast, but my finger glows and I can heal. But you don't know that at first.
He has a weird psychic connection with Elliot, and like
yeah,
that is a thing that has like unsettling implications in any other movie. Like, so, basically any sort of parody of ET rings hollow because it is so fucking sincere that it's like,
You just
well,
can't
fuck you,
make fun of
man.
it.
Like, yeah, it's like, how dare you, like, be mean about people, like, sincerely having feelings.
Yeah.
Like,
About friendship. You can't be ironic about childhood friendship.
and like, and she talks about how, like, um, the bullies that pick on Elliot, like his older brother's dipshit friends,
Yeah.
like in any other 80s movie, they would have had like a comeuppance moment.
Yes.
That where in this they get to come on the ride.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, even like Neverending Story, the bad guys got like buzzed by a dragon. It was just like, holy crap. Like the bullies.
So yeah, so it's like because it is so feel goody and
Yeah.
like nice all the way through,
Kind of can't even touch that.
it's hard to remake it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was talk about making a sequel, but Steven Spielberg eventually was like, anything that we do, we'll just like cheapen it.
Yeah. Okay, this page is getting there.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. It made me want to rewatch The Iron Giant.
Mm. Yeah, it's been a while since I watched Iron Giant. I would watch that one again.
Yeah, it's good shit.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I just saw the penguin panel. Oh no.
I sent it to you.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so cute.
He's cute. I want to keep him.
Can you imagine
So he's
hugging a
doing that
penguin?
while yeah, he's doing that while everyone else is fighting a big demon.
Excellent. Good.
Oh, I've also been listening to the Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast because like
Mm.
since that show has existed for like 15 years, the creators have been like, oh, we're gonna like rewatch it and do like retrospective talking
Yeah.
bits. And so what's funny is there's a bit where they get to an episode called Aluminum Monster vs. Fatty Magoo, which is Dee runs into a girl who was similarly unpopular like her in high school. And they used to be like, well, one day we'll be successes and we'll show them all those shitty popular kids.
Yeah.
Um, and Dee finds out that this person that she used to hang out with, who was called Fatty Magoo in high school, lost a bunch of weight and now runs a indie fashion line and has her own store. So she's like, yeah, I like took to heart like what we used to always talk about in high school. And so then you have Dee, who has accomplished nothing,
Yeah.
gets insanely jealous, and shitty. And so one of the showrunners is like, so my son's 12, and you know, he's been asking like if he can see the show. And I figured this would be a good one to like start him with, because I didn't remember anything particularly
Awful.
heinous.
How about
Like
the show full of awful
like
people?
they're awful people, but like they don't do anything inappropriate for a 12-year-old in
Yeah.
his memory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he's like, and then we're watching the episode, and I realized this is the episode where we established that Dennis is a rapist, and
Right.
um,
They're like, right,
and
right,
then
turn off the
he's
TV, turn off the TV.
yeah. No, he didn't do that. He did finish the episode. He's like, maybe should have picked a different one. But he then said, well, that made him uncomfortable. What did make him feel better is his son turned to him and was like, so Dennis is the bad guy, right?
Yes.
Like, he's a psychopath. And
Yeah.
he's like, so my 12-year-old understands that these people are awful and not to be role models. So I
Yeah.
was like,
Do not
and he's like, so
idealize
I
these
feel,
humans.
and he's like, so I feel good that we've made it clear that these people should not be idolized.
Yeah. Good.
Because they have talked about like what stuff ages, how stuff ages, and
Sometimes very poorly.
but also like, so a bunch of the episodes are not allowed on streaming services anymore.
Right.
And so they were talking about that, and they're like, some of them it's like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that, but some of them they still stand by the use of racial insensitive costumes.
Right.
Because they're making a point in the story. Which is usually this racist thing from the past is just like this racist thing we still do.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So they're usually when they do something like that, it's they do the what is socially acceptable racism and then follow it with older school racism to be like they're the same.
Yeah.
Just one is what we still do.
And one of them is like, oh, most people understand that this is not right.
But not even most people, because okay, so an example of one that they still stand by, but you cannot watch it on a streaming service, is they basically make a fan sequel to Lethal Weapon.
Right.
And one of the co-hosts, one of the leads is black.
Right.
And they're all white.
Yeah, so they do some blackface.
So the thing is they can't agree on who gets to play who in the movie.
Right.
So they switch roles. And you have, when Mac plays the black guy, he's wearing blackface. When Dennis is playing the black guy, he is doing an over-the-top black scent that is also super racist. But it's like, that wouldn't get the episode taken off streaming.
Yeah.
Is their point.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and in fact, that is literally an argument that they have in the show is, how is what you're doing any better?
It's like, well, you could show mine on TV.
They don't even say that. They argue, well, I'm being true to the character. And he's like, well, so am I. Like, they don't even use the what's socially acceptable. It's just...
Right.
So the show is arguing, those things are no different. Which I say is a fair argument, but also I understand why it is taken off TV.
I think that's about as much as my wrist can hold up for today.
Well, thanks, folks, for watching.
Yeah,
Um,
it is good to be back. I hope everybody had a good
yeah,
holiday.
yeah, and I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be streaming with my pal Joe.
Nice, nice,
Um,
nice.
and then when's your D&D one?
Uh, Not until next Friday, but I am starting a new game this week, this Saturday.
Ooh.
It'll be real fun. It's the Cipher system, so we don't have, I wouldn't even get into the open gaming license stuff tonight. I'll talk about that a different week. It may have imploded by then anyway. But yeah, so I'm starting a
Remind
non-D&D game this weekend. It'll be real fun. Look for my tweets about it.
remind me to ask you about the open gaming system stuff next
Mm-hmm.
week.
Oh, it's a lot.
Because I do want to hear about it.
I was
Yeah.
going over that with Jam this weekend, and it was a long conversation because there's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. I'll
Yeah.
talk
You
to you
all have a
all
good one.
later.
Bye.
Bye.